There is some new video that has surfaced in the Nolan Wells case that seems to support.
An NFL Hall of Famer who never met Nolan Wells just put $25,000 on the table for information about how he died, not because he knew the family, not because he had any personal connection to Horn Island or Ocean Springs or the Wells family at all, because he was watching the same thing millions of other people have been watching for 3 weeks. A case with contradictions nobody has explained, and a reward fund that keeps growing because the answers have not suskurb. Hit that bell. The reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction in Nolan Wells' death now stands at $125,000. It did not start there. At Nolan's funeral on July 20th, Reverend Al Sharpton announced a $50,000 reward. Funded through the National Action Network, filmmaker Tyler Perry, who had already paid for the funeral itself, matched that amount shortly after, bringing the total to $100,000. Then, on July 21st, one day later, Pro Football Hall of Famer Terrell Owens added $25,000 of his own $125,000. In the span of roughly 48 hours, the reward attached to this case grew 2.5 times over. That pace matters as much as the total figure. A reward that sits static at one number for weeks sends a very different signal than one that visibly compounds within days, first from a civil rights leader, then matched almost immediately by an entertainment figure, then expanded again the very next day by a professional athlete with no prior connection to any of it. 3 separate people from 3 separate corners of American public life, choosing to put their own money behind a case none of them had any obligation to touch. Sharpton explained his own reasoning directly, standing at the pulpit during Monday's service. He was not on that island by himself, Sharpton said. Somebody saw something and knows something. So I didn't come to make money. I came to give money, stand up and tell the truth. Whatever it is, good or bad. Whatever it is, good or bad. Sharpton was not offering money for a specific conclusion. He was offering money for the truth itself, regardless of what that truth turns out to be. An explicit acknowledgement that the reward is not designed to produce an accusation, but simply to produce an answer. Terrell Owens attended the funeral in person, standing behind Nolan's family alongside Sharpton and attorney Ben Crump during the news conference that followed. He did not release an extended personal statement explaining his specific reasoning. His presence and his $25,000 spoke for themselves. An NFL Hall of Famer choosing to physically show up for a funeral in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, for a young man he had never met, because the case had reached him the way it has reached millions of other people who have never set foot in Mississippi. Owens's involvement fits a broader pattern worth naming. High-profile figures joining reward efforts in cases like this one typically do so for one of a few overlapping reasons: genuine personal conviction about the specific facts, a broader commitment to causes involving young black men whose deaths have drawn insufficient institutional scrutiny, or simply the platform-building visibility that comes with attaching one's name to a nationally covered case. None of those motivations are mutually exclusive, and none of them, individually or combined, says anything about whether Owens has private knowledge or a specific theory about what happened to Nolan Wells. What his contribution does say, concretely, is that the case has now drawn support from figures entirely outside the immediate orbit of civil rights advocacy that first brought Crump and Sharpton into it, extending the reward's visibility into new audiences, new social media followings, new pools of potential witnesses who might otherwise never have encountered this specific case at all. That expansion of reach is, itself, part of what a reward escalation is designed to accomplish. It is not simply about the dollar figure available to any single tipster. It is about the size and diversity of the audience now aware that figure exists. Reward escalation in a case like this one is not simply about the dollar amount. It is a signal aimed at exactly the kind of person a reward is designed to reach. A single reward announcement can be background noise in an oversaturated news cycle, a reward that keeps growing. First $50,000, then matched to $100,000, then pushed to $125. Zero within the span of a single week tells a very different story to anyone who might actually have relevant information. It tells them the case has not gone away. It tells them public and institutional attention is intensifying, not fading, the longer this goes unresolved. And for someone sitting on information they have been reluctant to share, whether out of fear, loyalty, uncertainty, or simple hesitation, a reward that keeps climbing changes the calculation. Each time it grows $50,000 might not be enough to overcome whatever is holding someone back $125,000. Arriving within days might be. That is the actual mechanism reward escalation is built around. Not simply larger payment, but visible, accelerating proof that the people asking for information are not going to stop asking. A statement released alongside Owens' contribution, attributed to those coordinating the reward effort, made the intended purpose explicit. We are deeply grateful to Terrell Owens, Rev. Al Sharpton, and Tyler Perry for standing with Nolan Wells' family in their pursuit of truth and justice, the statement read. Their generosity and unwavering support send a powerful message that this tragedy will not be swept under the rug and that we will not stop until the truth is uncovered and justice is served. It continued. Someone knows what happened to Nolan on Horn Island. We urge anyone with information, no matter how small it may seem, to come forward. This reward is being offered for information that leads to an arrest and conviction because Nolan's family deserves the truth, and those responsible must be held accountable, no matter how small it may seem. That specific phrase matters. Reward campaigns like this one are not simply fishing for a single dramatic confession. They are built to lower the threshold for what counts as worth reporting, encouraging someone who might dismiss their own small piece of information as irrelevant to reconsider and pick up the phone anyway. The reward exists inside an investigation that has, by every public account, become genuinely complicated. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter has said the three friends who traveled with Nolan to Horn Island are cooperating and has maintained that Nolan chose to remain behind voluntarily. Ben Crump has pushed back directly against that characterization, pointing to specific details that complicate it. Nolan's phone and keys were left behind with the friends rather than with him. Messages on that phone appeared to have been deleted before it was returned to the family, and at least one independent witness has given an account that contradicts the sheriff's version of what happened that day. Those specific contradictions have been documented and examined at length as this case has developed. What the reward escalation adds to that picture is not new factual detail about July 4th itself. It is evidence of how seriously the pressure to resolve those contradictions has grown. Pressure now backed by 6 figures of reward money, contributed by public figures with no connection to this case beyond having watched it unfold like everyone else. That same pressure has produced something else: a federal investigation into threats made against the people connected to this case. The FBI has confirmed it is investigating threats directed at witnesses, officials, and family members tied to Nolan Wells' death. A parallel inquiry running alongside the death investigation itself. Mississippi Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell addressed this directly, saying threats against public officials, against possible witnesses, and against the folks that are involved in this investigation and the family constitute criminal acts that will be taken very, very seriously. That threats investigation and the reward escalation are, in a sense, pulling in opposite directions on the same rope. The reward is designed to make people who know something feel safer coming forward by demonstrating sustained public commitment to the case. The threats do the opposite, making anyone connected to this case, witness or otherwise, warier of saying anything publicly at all, for fear of becoming a target themselves. $125. Saying incentive to come forward means little if the person holding relevant information has also watched witnesses, in this exact case, receive threats serious enough to draw federal attention. Consider the position of someone genuinely weighing whether to call that tip line. They see a reward that has grown to six figures in under a week. They also see, in the same news cycle, that people already connected to this case, teenagers, family members, a sitting judge's own son, have received threats serious enough for the FBI to open a separate investigation. The reward says, come forward and be part of the solution. The threat environment says, come forward and you might become the next target. Reconciling those two competing signals is not something $125,000 alone can guarantee. It requires the threat's investigation to actually produce consequences, visible enough that potential witnesses believe coming forward is safe, not simply that it is well compensated. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, a standout football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He traveled to Horn Island on July 4th with 3 friends. According to public reporting, Wells, who is black, made that trip with friends who are white, a detail that has not been the central focus of the investigation itself, but has shaped much of the national attention and public reaction surrounding the case since his death became widely known. He did not return with them. His body was recovered off the island's coast 2 days later, found by a U.S. park ranger at the northwestern tip of Horn Island. Authorities initially said they did not suspect foul play. 6 weeks and a great deal of scrutiny later, an independent autopsy commissioned by his family has returned finding. The family's attorney describes as unable to rule out non-accidental factors, while official state findings remain unreleased, with toxicology results still pending. The reward, now sitting at $125,000, will not, on its own, resolve any of that. It cannot process toxicology results faster. It cannot force a state medical examiner to release findings on a different timeline. It cannot, by itself, reconcile the sheriff's account of a voluntary decision to stay behind with an independent witness contradicting version of events. What it can do is exactly what Sharpton described from the pulpit: give someone who has been quiet a specific, growing reason to stop being quiet. Money alone has never been the entire mechanism behind cases like this one breaking open. It works alongside sustained attention, alongside federal resources now examining digital evidence, alongside a threats investigation meant to make coming forward less dangerous, alongside a family and their attorney refusing to let the case fade from national conversation the way so many others quietly have. $125,000 is the most visible piece of that combined pressure. It is not the only piece. $50,000 from a reverend, matched by a filmmaker who had already paid for the funeral, ginsed days later by an NFL Hall of Famer with no personal stake in this case, beyond having watched it, like the rest of the country, and decided the silence had gone on long enough. If you have any real information about Nolan Wells' death, no matter how small it may seem, call 888-991-1172 or contact the FBI directly at tips.fi.gov or 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction is now $125,000. Caspere. Hit that bell. 3 men, none of them family. All of them convinced somebody out there already knows the truth. $125. The 00 is the price they've put on that truth finally being told.